Bug Country 99.7 and 101.1, today's new country. We are thinking pink all month long with Fred F. Collis and Sons here on Bug Country. And in studio, I've got Melane Humphreys. How are you doing?
Great, thank you.
And it's your first time in the studio. What do you think so far?
Amazing.
It's amazing. All right. So we are thinking pink with making strides against breast cancer all month long. And maybe why don't you give us a little bit of a story of who you are in your journey with being a breast cancer survivor?
Great. Well, I'm a mom of four. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in September of 2020. I was 40 years old. And luckily, I was diagnosed early, at an early stage, and kind of hit me like a cinder block, unfortunately, in the middle of the pandemic, which was like the worst time ever to be hit with news like that, while also caring for, 4 young kids. Luckily, I have the support of my husband, who had to help not only, a recovering wife while, I was recovering from getting my double mastectomy, but also had to care for the 4 kids, which is kind of a challenge in the middle of the pandemic.
I bet.
Yeah. So that was a little bit about kind of that moment in time, but luckily we caught it early. So caught it because of family history. BRCA positive family history, so was getting regular mammograms from 35 on. Had no signs or symptoms and just appeared abnormal. They called me back for a second mammogram, and I was like, oh shoot, this isn't going to be good. And then went for the biopsy, and then I thought, oh gosh, if I'm getting a biopsy, that's not going to be good either. And then when I got the call from the doctor, it was like on a Sunday. I was actually asleep. She's like, it's cancer. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. I'll go back to bed.
Oh my gosh. So can you maybe touch on, obviously being a mom of 4 kids, so how do you adjust to that? Obviously having 4 kids and having to tell them that you are about to go through this process of having breast cancer.
They took it okay. So the ages are 15, twin 9-year-olds, and 5-year-old, and the youngest has Down syndrome. So caring also for a child with special needs is a challenge in itself, because he requires a lot of additional work. But overall, the kids took it kind of hard. Like, they weren't sure what to expect. They weren't sure if the outcome would be okay, what was going to happen. To be honest, I was taking it a little harder than even they were. I ended up getting really depressed. I know sometimes we don't talk about mental health, but I got really depressed. It was the pandemic. But luckily I had my husband, and I mean, he would schedule like Zoom dates with me and my friends, like with like wine and like dates with my friends, so we could have like a wine, Zoom date, or a margarita night with my friend from North Carolina, or he would draw me a bath with candles and everything.
Aww, that's awesome. And so I'm somebody who really loves to talk about mental health, so I appreciate that this is something that we are talking about, because people might not think that you can be depressed or anxious while you're obviously battling breast cancer. So I appreciate that you are bringing that up and talking about it. And so obviously it's a huge adjustment while you're going through COVID. So how did you kind of get through all of that?
Well, luckily he was able to allow me the pathway to still have those connections that I needed with those friends, because I couldn't invite them over.
Right.
I couldn't have them just stop by my house, right? Because in the pandemic, it was everyone stay away. So he was able to, download my friends' numbers from my phone and say, okay, Melane needs an intervention. She needs wine. You get wine at your house, and this is the time you're going to meet. And you're going to call her at this moment, and you're going to have wine at your house, and she's going to have wine ready to go, and you guys are going to plan a nice little call. and he had it all planned out. So a lot of planning went into it from his end, and it was wonderful. It was just what I needed, and he had him going on a weekly basis through all of my treatments.
And it probably, obviously, you already feel alone because, like, you're in quarantine or you're social distancing. So it's nice to have that support from friends and family as well.
Yes, because he also knew he couldn't do it all. He couldn't be my only support person. There's only so much one person can be for another person. So he knew, okay, I need to enlist help from some of her people.
Right.
You know?
And so talking a little bit more about your journey, because obviously I learn every single year there's different types of breast cancer and stuff like that. So you mentioned that it's family history. So when you started going to the doctor and getting checked and stuff like that, how did that whole journey, I guess, start? Because you didn't necessarily find anything, but you were just continually going.
So I was BRCA positive, and they found DCIS, which is early stage breast cancer. And I got the double mastectomy. And luckily they caught it early, and they got it all. So I was lucky that we caught it early and they got it all. Now, since then, with the genetics of being BRCA positive, I have had further instances where my cancer markers have risen. So being BRCA positive leaves me at risk for other types of cancers, like ovarian, endometrial. And I'm actually currently going through treatment for GYN cancers as well at the University of Rochester. And that's just something that genetics play. But luckily, I'm proactive, and once you've kind of had one, they monitor you for the other. So they've been looking at my CA-125 regularly, and the first second that it spiked, I was able to be referred out to the University of Rochester. And as a matter of fact, I'll be going there on Monday.
Oh, wow. And so you talk about being proactive and obviously staying on top of it and going to your appointments and stuff like that. So what kind of advice do you have for maybe somebody my age?
So I would recommend, if you know you have a family history, make sure you go to your doctor, talk about getting checked, go for annual mammograms. If you don't have any mammograms scheduled, ask to get one. Because for me, I had no signs or symptoms. So it wasn't that I felt a lump or anything of that nature. So early detection is really best.
Awesome. And I overheard you guys talking about, you guys are very involved in making strides.
We are. We're involved in making strides, as well as Real Men Wear Pink.
So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So my husband, John Humphreys, is one of the Real Men Wear Pink ambassadors for Central New York. And so he raises money each year for the American Cancer Society. He's one of about 10 men.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That raises money for the American Cancer Society each October. I believe they have their kickoff at the Stanley, October 6th. So there are some links to be able to raise money for the American Cancer Society for Real Men Wear Pink. And he's one of the few ambassadors in this area.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have to share that on our social media for you guys. So if people want to go donate and get involved, they can. And Melane, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story. This is Think Pink all month long with Fred F. Collis and Sons. And if you want to learn more about Melane and her story, you can head on over to Bug Country CNY and all of our social media and at bugcountry.com. And Melane, thank you so much again.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.